A few weeks ago, I took my kids on a hike to a river near our house. Hike is a little bit of an ambitious word here. Meander, plod, shuffle as slowly as possible. These words might be more fitting. It was 2 miles to the river, and at 1/4 of a mile came the first sign of distress from my youngest meanderer. "Are we there yet? I'm hot. My legs are so tired. Can you carry me?" As we wandered further down the trail, a combination of encouragement, silly songs, and candy bribery kept us moving in the direction of the water. The promise of the river was just ahead. "We're almost there. We're almost there," I said. It was our goal. I kept an eye on my watch, and we counted down every 1/10 of a mile. But my patience and enthusiasm started to thin at the 194th proclamation of "I hate hiking" out of the mouth of my smallest miracle of a person. Finally, we reached the 2-mile mark. We were there, but the river was not. Perfect. We knew we were close, so we began searching small trails. Evan wandered down a narrow trail and called back, Mom, the river's over here, but we can't get to it. It's down a really steep cliff." "Yes, I see. Okay, let's go back down and sit down in the shade and let's have a snack." At the mention of the word snack, my girls both burst into tears, devastated. "We came all this way and we can't go down to the river," they wailed. Now, my girls hate hiking and snacks. I'm feeling like I'm really on a roll here, like Mother of the Year material. The 2-mile plod back to the car seems impossibly long without dipping our toes in the water. And I've already used up all my bribe candy, so it's all threats from here on out. After tears were dried and snacks were nibbled, we began to backtrack, and we found another small trail through tall brush. We picked our way down, and I braced for another disappointment, when suddenly the brush opened up in front of us and revealed a beautiful gravel bank gently sloping down to the water. The kids squealed in delight, and my breath caught in my chest. As they skipped rocks and dug in sandy spots, I sat in awe at the bigness of the river and the smallness of me and the miracle of having arrived for a moment. It was simply amazing that something so immense, so powerful and alive could be hidden from view and so difficult to access. And it was humbling that we might have given up just a few yards away from what we hoped for so greatly. A long time ago in Egypt, a mother went down to the river. It was her last hope. The Pharaoh had ordered an act of genocide targeting the male children of the Israelites living in Egypt, and she had hidden Moses as long as she could. There was nothing else to be done, so she went down to the river. She made a boat, and placing the child in it, she watched as he floated away on the lapping water. She hoped he would arrive somewhere in a better place. She sensed that something greater, something immense and powerful and alive was just outside her view. But she had no certainty, no promises, no heralding angels. When she looked in the face of her child, there was goodness and light and beauty, a reflection of the very image of God. And so she placed her hope, crying and swaddled, in the waters, and she let him go. I wonder if she could have guessed the twists and turns that lay ahead. How the daughter of her greatest enemy would become her son's safe harbor. how his sister Miriam's courage would bridge the distance between his new life and his old life, allowing his mother to hold him in her arms as long as possible. How her son would be raised in a palace while his ancestors toiled under the beating sun outside its walls. How her son would grow into a man whose spirit would be broken by the disparity of his life and what could have been his. A man who would commit murder when he witnessed a slave driver beating a figure which bore a likeness too much like his own. I wonder if she guessed that her baby boy would flee to the desert. How he would flee from the banks of the river where hope had saved him. And how he would hear God in unimaginable places, in burning bushes, in parted seas, in promised lands. Perhaps when your enemy's daughter saves your life, you can't help but see goodness and truth and wonder in unexpected places. Sometimes the thing we need most seems just beyond our grasp, outside our vision, beyond our individual ability. Moses' mother could not save her child on her own. She could not know the path that led Moses and her people to freedom. But she had hope in a God who desired freedom for his people, for all people. And because of this hope, she went down to the river. It's breathtaking to stop and consider how the path of freedom was traced through the lives of all these people who hoped for Moses' fullness as a child of God. Through his mother's shaking hands, through his sister's watchful gaze, through the kind embrace of a Pharaoh's daughter. Each act of hope for him, each act of hope for the goodness in his life became a trail marker, a path which would split open the sea and let the people walk through the waters to freedom. When I reached the river with my kids, I sat and I wondered about all the people in my life who have hoped for goodness and freedom and fullness for me. The people who have hoped for me to find my way in this one wild and wonderful life. Hope has been a hot meal, a warm embrace, a quiet prayer. Hope has been found in grief and letting go. And hope has come from unexpected places and people, changing the shape of my life. Truly, all of us are walking a path unmarked, blazing trails into the wilderness in search of God's presence. Yet, we do not walk this path alone. As we practice being the church, we commit to practicing an active hope for each other, for our families, for our neighbors, and even our enemies. We commit to a desire for freedom and fullness of life for all of God's children. And when we do this, we become trail markers for one another. Little arrows traced into the dirt or carved into a tree, encouraging one another to keep seeking, keep growing, keep walking in the direction of the river of God's presence. People of God, you have been my trail markers. You have been my hope on the journey. And once you've seen the river, once you've stood on the banks of God's flowing presence and looked into the reflection of your own face and seen God looking back at you with hope for your fullness, I think you can never look at anyone or anything again without seeing God's face. And when you see God's face, whether it's staring back at you from the daughter of your greatest enemy or from an excessively small, whiny child, you'll imagine all the goodness that God placed in that miracle of a person. And you will want goodness for them, and you will want them to see it. And so, You'll drag each other out hiking through the wilderness, cursing and crying, thirsty and sweating. You'll go down to the river. Because this is what hope does. May we go out as people of faith and be trail markers for one another through our hope in Jesus Christ and through our journey to the river together. May we walk bravely in the hope of God's promise for our lives today and every day. Amen.